Here are a few of the facts I uncovered in the course of my research that I describe in the book. There are more African American adults under correctional control today, in prison or jail, on probation or parole, than were enslaved in 1850, a decade before the Civil War began. In 2004, more black men were disenfranchised than in 1870, the year the 15th Amendment was ratified, prohibiting laws that explicitly deny the right to vote on the basis of race. Today, of course, they're disenfranchised due to felon disenfranchisement laws. During the Jim Crow era, poll taxes and literacy tests kept African Americans from the polls. Well, today, felon disenfranchisement laws are accomplishing what poll taxes and literacy tests ultimately could not. A black child born today has less of a chance of being raised by both parents than a black child born during slavery. This is due in large part to the mass incarceration of black men.
You are a teenager and perhaps barely that. You live in an inner city ghetto. You probably have dropped out of school. And you have a chance to earn $1,000 a week selling crack. What do? You sell crack.
We need more prisons, more jails, more courts.
This ain't back in the days, but you don't hear me though.
You are Americans. You're the product of the freest society mankind has ever known.
America's public enemy #1 in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
Private Rate is male Negro, 5'7".
Music hitting your heart, cause I know you got a soul. Hey, listen if you're missing, y'all. Swinging while
I'm at a record high. People coming, people going, people born to die.
By some estimates, 75% of the black youngsters ages 16 to 19 are out of work.
It was a lot of poverty, a lot of hard times, a lot of people struggling.
We need breaks somewhere, and nobody seems to want to give young people a break.
The government's policies of tax breaks for the rich and cutbacks for the poor are devastating.
We had the teen post, we had the CETA program. When Reagan came in office here a couple years, he cut all that out.
Money's the key to end all your woes. Your ups, your downs, your highs, and your lows. Won't you tell me last time that love bought your clothes? It's like that, and that's the way it is.
The collapse of the inner city economy has created a new way of life, an economy based on drugs.
One of my homies offered me a sack, and once I got involved in the crack game, it just seemed like my life blossomed.
You can't find yourself a job, you're gonna pump drugs.
Was the Speaker of the House, and he said, you know what, we're going to start punishing crack more than we punish powder. Chemically, they're indistinguishable, but you should be punished a lot more for crack.
There should be no mercy on them.
So he said, I think that the disparity should be 25 to 1. So for every 1 gram of crack, you should get the same punishment as 25 grams of powder. The Republicans said, no, we're the tough on crime people. We think it should be 50 to 1. Tip O'Neill said 75 to 1. Republicans said no, 100 to 1. That's how drug policy gets made.
We're getting tough on drugs, and we mean business. For those who are thinking of using drugs, we say stop. And to those who are pushing drugs, we say beware.
The Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 mandates a 5-year minimum sentence for a mere 5 grams of crack. It means that first-time nonviolent offenders will be sentenced to decades in prison for selling or possessing small amounts of the drug.
Mass incarceration has devastated black families to a degree comparable to slavery. Now, in some major urban areas, including right here in Chicago, more than half of working-age African-American men have criminal records and are thus subject to legalized discrimination for the rest of their lives. In fact, it was reported in 2004 that here in Chicago, if you take into account prisoners who are excluded from poverty statistics and unemployment statistics, thus greatly masking the severity of racial inequality in the United States. But if you take into account prisoners, as of 2004, nearly 80% of working-age African-American men in the Chicago area have criminal records. Now, these men are part of a growing undercaste, not class, caste, a group of people defined largely by race who are relegated to a permanent second-class status by law.
Hold up.
Now, I find that when I give talks about this issue, a good percentage of the folks there are tempted to say, "What are you talking about? Mass incarceration is not a system of racial control, it's a system of crime control." Now, if black people would just stop committing so many crimes, they wouldn't have to worry about going to prison and being stripped of their basic civil and human rights. But again, in Dr. King's honor, I'm committed to telling the truth, the whole truth about this. And the truth is, our prison population has quintupled, not doubled or tripled, quintupled for reasons that have stunningly little to do with crime or crime rates. We now have the highest rate of incarceration in the world, a penal system unprecedented in world history, but this is not, I repeat, not due to crime rates. Crime rates have fluctuated over the past 30 years, gone up, gone down. Today, as bad as they are in some cities, including Chicago, nationwide, crime rates are at historical lows. But incarceration rates have consistently soared. Most criminologists and sociologists today will admit crime rates and incarceration rates in the United States,